Welcome back to another installment of this special series for the Rest Revolution. I am excited to be back with you and excited to be here today with another amazing guest, a woman who has inspired me and um, likely inspired you as well. So today's guest is none other than Angela Benton. Welcome, Angela.
Already know as soon as I heard about the rest revolution, I was like, this is it. This is transformative. So I'm just excited to be here and happy that your idea is finally out into the world and people are really, resonating with it.
Thank you so much. And I reflect often on our conversations about rest, burnout, the great realignment, the rest revolution. And I think it's just so interesting how so many of us have come to this moment at the same time of really just re-examining the role of work and ambition and grinding in our lives and figuring out a more sustainable pathway forward. So, Angela, before we jump into your burnout story and thoughts on rest, why don't you introduce yourself to those who, those three people who haven't heard of you and
Sure.
don't know who you are?
Have to describe yourself and what it is, that you do. But I've been in the technology industry for coming up on almost 20 years. And technology is one of my first loves. Uh, Satisfies for me just a huge, I guess, curiosity that I have as technology changes and evolves so quickly over time. And especially as of late, we're seeing how quickly it's evolving just with AI and everything. And um, I've worked in Fortune 500 corporations in the internet industry, doing a variety of work as an engineer, as someone leading digital strategy. I have invested in companies. I started the first accelerator globally for people of color. And I helped folks raise a little over 47 million funding with that. And then I started, my own company. I'm actually I did three companies on my own, which is my venture studio. We have so many different ideas and concepts bubbling. And I also own a farm, which is great. For 2 years. So I'm kind of dibbling and dabbling in a lot of stuff. But if I were to explain who it is I am, I'm someone who's curious. I like to help people accomplish their goals, their visions, their dreams. And I do that through really focused mentorship and optimizing, I think, my daily workflows with AI. Now that's how I'm doing it.
Yes, yes. And I remember first coming across your work on CNN, I think it was, when you were in that it was like a documentary or a special about people of color in Silicon Valley in the tech space and was just so
Was believe
inspired by you.
2011. So over 10 years ago at this point, but
Hmm.
we were fortunate enough to be featured on Black in America, for those of you that remember, with Soledad O'Brien. And it was the series where they went to Silicon Valley. And frankly, that documentary literally transformed not just the industry, but also the world. I think it was the first time that, especially on, broadcast TV, that people saw um, individuals who included in an ecosystem really pull up their bootstraps, go to the belly of the beast, embed themselves in the belly of the beast, and literally launch their ideas. And so It was transformative for a lot of folks, people of color, but I mean, we got emails from people in Singapore, from people in the Philippines, from people in Israel, from people in various countries, Africa. So it was definitely not just a highlight of my career, but I definitely feel like as well.
Wow. It was really special and inspiring to watch. I may see if I can pull it up on YouTube or find it somewhere and watch it again because it really was, it captured a moment too. It captured this time, the energy of that time and the hopefulness and creativity and ingenuity and innovation of those early 2010s, 20 teens, or however you call them. Um, I think, yeah, that brings back a lot of really good memories. That was a really fun season. But you no longer are in Silicon Valley. Like you're completely removed from, at least geographically, that space. You have a farm, you're in Florida. So tell us about the events that conspired to bring you to the East Coast and to a whole new way of life, it seems.
I really love Florida and living in Florida. And even before I moved to Florida, like I would come here just often, and it was always as soon as the plane was landing, I got excited and it was like my place. Um, and then when I decided to move, is one, we had talked to founders all over the country. And one of the things that we noticed is not everybody wanted to move to Silicon Valley just to work on their idea. And so when we did a 10 city tour, you know, I was able to talk directly with founders and really realize, like, okay, it's not the end all be all for folks to come to Silicon Valley. And that really began to open up my mind, I guess, of what's possible. And I really just made the decision like, hey, I want to move. And it felt like revival, like I was at a peak in my career. Now looking back on it, it doesn't feel like it was a peak, but at the time, peak in my career where I could, I don't necessarily have to be based in Silicon Valley. Like I accomplished, I put enough work in, I should be able to be based wherever I want it to be. And so I moved to Miami with, all of these great ideas of how I was going to work and operate. And within a couple of weeks, I ended up getting diagnosed with cancer. And so that really changed everything for me. And that was really kind of this introduction into, um, you know, this movement. For me, it was really just, I felt like I had been working hard, drank tons of coffee like every day, 3 cups of black coffee. And so I wasn't really able to register when my body was tired, basically. Um, and I just really wanted to change the way it had worked. And, I learned a lot about myself. I learned a lot about business, but I also, more importantly, learned a lot or started to learn a lot about the way that I wanted to work. And I think, especially for people in
Mm.
the millennial generation and older, the idea of work is like, you put all of this hard work in, like there's no way to leapfrog that. Like it's just a necessary. And for me, I really to have fun again when I worked. I kind of felt like I stopped having fun. And then I wanted to work on my own terms. And I did a ton of different life changes. Like I became vegan when I was going through, chemo and radiation and everything. And yeah, just completely switched up my lifestyle, which is easy to do, kind of living in Miami, which was, it's always sunny. The temperature more or less is kind of the same year round. It's interesting that picking up and moving physical environment, so something to be said for that in terms of supporting your own rest revolution. It's very much a key factor.
Exactly. Question for you. When you received your breast cancer diagnosis, would you say you were at a point of burnout, or were you just kind of in the grind, enjoying work, needed a change of pace, but you had plans to keep going at the same pace?
Headquarters from Silicon Valley to Miami at the time and did all this press and stuff around. So my intention was like, yes, I want to move, um, but I'm still
But I'm gonna keep grinding.
until yeah, I got the cancer diagnosis. So
And I ask that because when doing the research and interviewing for my book, one of the patterns that really emerged in that reporting was that for most high achievers, they experienced what I call auto work on or overwork on autopilot. And so you're just overworking, and it's almost like the muscle memory of overworking. That's all you know to do. So like you're talking about the 3 cups of coffee, you don't even know how tired you are. Like your body is attuned, your mind is attuned to just overworking. And until there is a burnout breaking point, which for the people I interviewed showed up as either a health crisis for themselves or for someone they cared for, or a personal loss, someone passed away. Like until that burnout breaking point occurred, they really couldn't take themselves off of autopilot. And so what you're describing really mirrors um, that cycle that high achievers are experiencing across the board. So, what happened for you when you did slow down and start to heal and change your
book, but the research that created with this book like seriously needs to be studied because for high performers, it's not just a breaking point, rest, and you're all better. It's a habit, it's habitual, it's just a way of life. So usually um it feels like, at least in my it was something that I had to getting cancer, wasn't enough.
yeah.
Now I was able to, yeah, I
Wow, it
will
wasn't.
recover and change lifestyle, um, and everything like that. But, being a true entrepreneur, it's like you always have another idea. And I had another idea that I really wanted to pursue, maybe about after I was all done with all of my treatment. And that was Streamlytics. And I really wanted to grow it as, a high growth, startup. And so that required able to raise funding for it. But, it was still a kind of a high pressured situation. Um, and it felt like everything was going well. And then everything wasn't. And that kind of started with my mom passing away, the
Mhm.
fundraising landscape changing. And at that point in time, all of the things that I had worked for really just didn't matter as much. So that time in my life really gave me a lot of perspective. And that's really when I started the process of like, hey, I want to move from Miami. I want to move to a farm. Don't ask me where the idea came from for a farm. I'm not a farm girl. Historically, it was just kind of this idea that popped in my head. I thought about it, I was like, actually, this would be really good for me. I'm vegan. I can have my garden. I was doing, kind of these subscription farm to home boxes anyway. And the more I thought about it, I was like, this would be a really good way to balance life regularly. So, not enough to kind of have a standing desk and walking on a treadmill like while you're working and while you're grinding. I really wanted to be able to, in between calls, to go outside and go for a walk on my property or play with my dogs and have that very integrated balance into my life that being chained to a calendar from or what have you. And so that's what the farm had, the idea and the concept of the farm. That's kind of what that brought for me. And then I actually was able to find a property that I loved, that was, just had a really good energy when I found it. And then the real work became for the way of living. I mean, and when you're designing it, it really, you can kind of sit down and get pen up a paper and actually like write it out. This is what I want my life to kind of be like. But for me, I actually really didn't take that approach. It was a lot of learning and tinkering and saying, okay, I don't like this. I'm going back into my old patterns. And then it's also the people that you have around you as well. Um, and especially accelerator and like you, Amanda, like everyone in my AI accelerator cohorts were on the same page as me in terms of where I am in my life. And things that would really irk me, like, oh my God, I got to cancel a meeting or I have to cancel a session and we have an accelerator tonight. The times that I had to do that during the accelerator, people extended grace to me for that, to extend grace to myself.
Yes, you've said so much, and I got to go back because you glossed over a few things. First and foremost, when you mentioned that you don't know where the idea for the farm or living on a farm, you're not a farm girl, where did that come from? And oh, that is, I truly believe that our intuitive guidance and internal wisdom, it's there all the time, whether we know it, acknowledge it. And I think, when you were talking about drinking 3 cups of coffee and just moving so fast that you couldn't even hear yourself, the opportunity to get still reveals wisdom. Like, think about, when you say a farm, I'm like, that's the perfect place to heal. That's the perfect place to reset your life. It's literally a metaphor, of what can I plant? What can take root here? What do I want to grow? And I talk a lot in the book about how the overworking on autopilot and machine mindset that really developed, in my opinion, after the industrial revolution can be tied back to management thinkers who were doing what they should have done, making things more efficient, but encouraging us to learn or try to emulate machinery. And George Washington Carver, the brilliant scientist, farmer, and botanist, focused on helping restore the depleted soils in the South after poor farmers had just been, wearing the land out to get these cash crops. And so I think, when we think about nature and the lessons that we can learn from it, but also the healing medicine contained within it, your own, whether you saw it, read it, it's ancestral, a grandparent whispered, hey girl, you need to get on the farm. Like, I think that's just such a great example of how our souls and our bodies and our spirits really know what we need. Um, and so I'm so happy for you, and I'm so jealous because I want to live on a farm.
One thing about me is I do follow my intuition. And so I think a lot of people will look at my career like, oh, you had this master plan. And like, I really didn't. Like, I have ideas and then I follow my gut on which ideas to follow. And the interesting thing about being on a farm is it's so opposite of technology in the world, kind of live in and it lived in and came from. And I am learning so much about me. And so it's interesting because it's just completely different. And then, start to look at, I love this point that you made about, the industrial revolution and us acting, like machines. And, a lot of us forget or may not even know, like the schedule of 9 to 5 was created by Henry Ford. You know what I mean? And so it's not even a real thing. And if you look at how people worked before the Industrial Revolution, number one, everybody had a farm. So you had professionals, doctors, entrepreneurs, accountants. They would wake up at the crack of dawn, actually work their farm in the morning, and then head to their professional job or what have you. And so I think to be said really about that and kind of communing with nature on a regular basis, whether you start your day or at the end of the day. But it's something that's honestly lost with the rise of the Industrial Revolution, and now even
It is.
my hope and what I'm excited about that I hope people don't miss out on is this rise of the AI revolution and this kind of new age of AI and data that we're moving into, and how you can use that and leverage that to really live more of your life so that you have more time to be outside and go for a walk or plant something or just lay in the grass. Who knows?
Definitely want to get your thoughts on AI because you are one of the best to do it and to teach on it and share about it. But before we get into that, tell me a little bit about the farm and nature and how being in such close proximity to the natural environment has changed your day-to-day practices, your nervous system, or just your approach and outlook, because I think you said before that you weren't like a nature girl prior to this, or were you?
I moved to LA and I was building Streamlytics, I did start doing hikes every day. I would do hikes in Griffith Park every day. And I would do maybe about 4 miles a day in the morning. And it really set the tone for the rest of my day. Being in the fresh air, I
Yeah,
had more I
that sounds amazing.
yes, I had
4
more
miles in the
ideas. I
morning?
had and so that was kind of like my first introduction to, because prior to that I was waking up and like going to the gym and working out, not being outside kind of in nature. So here at the farm, it's I just learn so much every day. Much it almost is a podcast in and of itself. But basically a lot about patience, entrepreneur and kind of like a high achiever, and coming into a farm environment. Well, guess what? If you don't have the time, money, or resources to do something, you're going to have to wait till the next season, right? It's not like it's not
Okay.
just wait a week or two or a month or two the next season. So that has been an interesting learning experience. Also, when I first moved here, within the first 4 weeks, we got hit with Hurricane Ian. And that was devastating for me because I was like, oh my gosh, I just bought this place. I didn't really know anything about farming at that time. And I had to start the process of hiring people to actually clean up all of the damage from Hurricane Ian. And in that process, I was also outside kind of doing the work, and doing the labor. Um, and I probably haven't spoken about this publicly, but at the same exact moment all of that was happening, Streamlytics was kind of falling apart. Our investors had abandoned us. For investment wasn't what it was. We were super early to market. Like now, everyone understands how important data is with AI and everything. But mind you, this was several years ago. So people really still didn't fully understand what it was that we were doing and what it was that we were building. And the investors that we had really kind of wanted to treat the idea of Streamlytics like normal high growth SaaS product. And it really wasn't that. It was a huge idea, but also we needed time, money, and resources for R&D to continue developing the technology. And AI and data is just an expensive place to be in. And so, I had Hurricane Ian going on. I had our institutional investors not really wanting to kind of reinvest, and all of the drama with that, and having a team and having to contemplate laying off the team, and closing that business down. And it was all of that going on. Plus, hindsight, I was likely still grieving the passing of my mom, which had happened that January as well. And so, me being outside and gardening and doing hurricane cleanup and like the physical labor of it, and sweating and digging with shovels and stuff like that, it was very therapeutic. And I always felt better at the end of the day. I mean, like, regardless of all of that stuff that was going on, I felt good at the end. And so that was something that was interesting. And really, at the time, I don't think I really realized it, but probably a bit of habit forming as well, because I very much like to structure my day now out doing something on the property every day. And especially when I first moved here, a lot of people were like, I don't know, thinking like I had a huge this farm and it's very glam, and like, nah, that's not what it was at all. Yeah, it's
I moved
not what it
here.
was at all. It was me and as like a small team of workers that I hired, but like, no, I don't have a groundsman. You know what I mean? I did not have that stuff. And so it was, and I'm actually glad I didn't, because even now, I've been here about 2 years. There's so much knowledge and information that I've gathered, just the land and land management. What I mean, stuff that I would never think about before. Like, oh, okay, so this pond floods and it goes to this side of the property, so we need to build a dam here. And yeah, there's so much that I've learned. And um, my holding company is actually called, and it's called that because so much of my life right now is about grounding and developing a vision, and yeah, just like a new way of working that hopefully, fingers crossed, I never have to recover again. So it's less of the back and forth, like, okay, I'm sick, or okay, I have, a personal crisis, and rebuilding yourself only to put yourself in that process again, which is anti kind of culture. And so what I love about so many of the founders that I'm working with now within Fruit Ventures is everyone's on the same page. Like, everyone wants to build something sustainable for them in their life. It's not about chasing valuations and raising money. Like, that might happen as a result, but it's not intimately intertwined like it was in the previous work that I've done. And so, and then also, I'm able to make a lot of friends as well in the process. And so it's much
Right, right.
more holistic, say feminine, if you will, if, like in the masculinity and femininity of like how we build things, and the idea and the construct of like building something is very masculine versus nurturing on the feminine. I feel like I'm in a nurturing era.
I love that. And I love that for you. That's so great. Um, I want to take a departure into AI and how you got immersed in it, how you're using it now, how it's supporting you on the farm, what you see happening. I love following your posts on Instagram when you break down a new AI topic. So helpful, so very, very helpful. And I really do feel like you have helped me just change my mindset around what's possible with AI and the necessity of it, how it can be integrated. And so, just how did you get into the space? I mean, I know you are already in tech, but specifically with AI, how did that become your new thing that you teach about and share about and really evangelize to others?
Of a tech has been around for like a long time, and a lot of people don't know that. They think, oh, this is a new technology, but even back in the day when I was working as an engineer, we were discussing recommendation engines and machine learning. So it's not really a new thing. I think what feels new about it is a lot of startup founders, technologists. And so they might not historical knowledge of like the history of AI, and really that we've been using a lot of these technologies for quite some time. So that's the first thing. The second thing is Lytics. Streamlytics was very much, it's 100% a data company, but also an AI company. And so, the algorithms and such that I developed within Streamlytics, things like, how to value personal data, like, that was an idea that I had that popped up from those nature walks, you know what I mean? And I just, and back in LA, and I just jot them down, you know what I mean? Those things really, and like I was deep and expert level understanding AI because of having to deal with so much data, having to deal with how to the data and process the data so that it can be used for machine learning training. It really gave me, just a level of intimacy in terms of what's involved. And then, with the rise of AI, immediately between data, just became all more important. And again, like earlier in the conversation, I mentioned like I kind of just have ideas for stuff and it's like a gut and I do it. Streamlytics was one of those things. I was like, oh, this is
Yeah.
intellectually stimulating for me. Like I like what this is doing to my brain intellectually. And then flash forward, 4 or 5 years, and everyone's talking about AI and data. And so for me, the opportunity really became less about teaching people tools and really teaching people how to think about the data that they have and the data that they're generating, um, to be used in combination with AI. And so that's really a lot of the stuff that I'm doing right now, and just even working with founders in the accelerator. Idea of how to think in a data centric way is going to be extremely important for the next 10 to 20 years because everything is going to be shifting to AI. And so, for me, the sense of urgency that I felt was one, this is an overhyped market. So there's a lot talking that are not educated or have any idea. And then two, how can I contribute to this space with information that's also credible that can set people up for future successes, long term, if this is the space that they want to be in, not just with their work, but future successes with their life. You know what I mean? Because the fact of the matter is, I have someone right now, an engineer that I'm partnering with. He's an AI assisted engineer. We're building out a whole MVP. The AI is coding the MVP for it. Okay. And we're talking and communicating within a small group, not Slack. You know what I mean? And so there's this whole new way of working that then affords people the opportunity to go outside or pick their kid up from school or have a picnic or what have you. And that's not just the life that I want for myself using AI, it's really the life that I want for everyone. And so yeah, so the micro trainings that I do social media are really just a way for me to like, hey, let me just put something out there. It's out in the ether. I'm not, it's not a thing that I'm like, oh, I want to make. It's not a business entity in that sense. You know what I mean? I want to put this information out there. I want people to have access to it affordably. Um, how do I do that? Now, my biggest issue is the level of involvement social media takes to get our ideas out there, which is probably yet again a whole nother podcast for us to discuss and talk about. But even the idea of, okay, let's say marketing, maybe a lot of your marketing comes from, posting on your social media accounts. I'm really just, I'm in a phase where I'm testing been tested cloning my own AI voice, and I have that down to a T. You know what I mean? And I'm even thinking about, okay, how do we share how to train a voice AI with other people? And it's all stuff that's really simple, but to your earlier point, it's shifting how people think about the work that they are doing, whether for home, professional lives, and the labor that's associated with it.
One of the things that really stuck out to me about your perspective on AI and got my attention once. I can't remember exactly what you said, but you posted something about, if you do not embrace AI, you will be left behind. Like you will. And it felt like a warning to people who are nervous about adopting something new or just don't like the idea of AI. A lot of people are just really anti AI, even though, like you said, it's embedded in so many things already that we have and we experience. But can you talk a little bit about, especially, Black people, what we, how we really need to be embracing these tools to make our lives easier so that we don't have to work as hard, but also to equip us for the future.
I have a love hate relationship with social media so much because at the time I saw a lot of really big influencers who are not in tech, they're not technologists, and they're like anti AI, don't use it, blah, 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 blah. And that's honestly, for real, that's really why I started talking about it and posting about it because for me, like so sensationalized right now, technology or not, just across the board. And so this for me felt like another opportunity for people to sensationalize something by basically fear mongering and the audience at the same time. So it seemed just like strange and weird to me. And the warmth of urgency was really that these people who are doing this from a self-serving perspective because they want to establish themselves as leaders, and grow their following are going to do a disservice to community of people potentially. And so, yeah, the idea of it's a fad, it's not a fad because, using AI and technology, and you've probably been a benefactor of AI in the technology industry for at least the past 15 years. One. Two, learning not just how to, again, like the data piece of it is literally going to be the foundation for everything moving forward. And so if you're not even a technologist, if you are somebody history, all you really have to do is look back to when the internet was invented. This is that type of shift that's happening right now. We're not talking about platform shifts from, laptops or desktops to laptops or laptops to mobile. We're talking about like a foundational level, like the internet was foundational level our daily lives. And so it's incredibly important, not just for your work, but like even the people that I'm hiring now for the work that I do. If you don't know how to use AI, then like we can't work together because I've set up everything in a systematic kind of way where, if I have an idea for something, you're going to use 3 GPTs and you're going to follow an SOP that I've already outlined. You know what I mean? Or for each business that I create and I have a co-founder GPT that's developed for that. And so whether I'm hiring an engineer or a VA or an accountant, everyone is going to use that co-founder GPT that I've created. And so, long story short, and sorry because I long winded, but long story short, these are the skills that are
No.
going to be needed again, not just for your work. So many people talk about AI in relation to your work. Yes, it will be for that, but it will also be for your personal life too. Like I use it for things that I'm doing, around the farm. I take a picture. This is a flower bed that I want to design. Show me purple flowers that bloom in fall for zone 9B. You know what I mean? Which is the zone that I'm in. And it gives me a list, of things.
Wow.
It's just, and even like, okay, maybe you're not like a farm or garden kind of person. It used to be I had to hire a stylist anytime that I wanted to do a photo shoot or what have you. Now you can build out professional, hyper realistic photos that you can use for anything. One, two, you can actually build an AI that's a stylist for yourself, right? Because all you're doing is cataloging and documenting the pieces in your wardrobe. And instead of now having a stylist for 250 or $500 to style you for an event, you can now go to this GPT and say, I have this event coming up. The aesthetic that I want is this. Can you put together a look for me? And it's pulling the data from your own wardrobe and coming up with a new way for you to style it. So there are, and the reason why I kind of give these examples is you can kind of see at the of it, it's really all about your data in terms of how you use AI, whether it's, professionally or personally. And that is really why it's so important. People who are just kind of fear mongering online, that annoys me because it really puts a ton of people at risk for not moving forward in life. Yeah.
Yes, they're going to be left behind or they'll be forced to catch up because everybody who said, the internet is crazy. What is that? They eventually got it together, I'm assuming. um this has been amazing and I want us to close on just the lessons that you have learned around your own rest because of course this episode and this whole series is to really get people excited about and learning how others are integrating the principles of the Rest Revolution book into their lives. And so I wanted to talk to you because I know that you have like you're a great example of someone who made a huge shift and is implementing rest, like you said, in really practical daily ways in nature. You're leveraging AI, as so many of us are learning to do. But like, what would be your lessons, your guidance, your tips to other high achievers who maybe have not yet had their rest revolution, um, and are still in active burnout and are looking for ways to come out of that and move
Yeah.
forward more sustainably?
Days are really to have the courage to read what you want. Particularly for higher achievers, I think hard and we get to a place financially where we're like, okay, I made it, but you got to that place financially to go back to square zero and rebuild your life. You know what I mean? And so, and be a beginner again,
And be a beginner again.
the fun in that and the ability to relearn things and redo things the way that maybe have worked in the past, but yeah, and explore,
And
allowing yourself to
explore.
explore. Yeah. I think that's my biggest thing. And then really and accountability. I probably not probably self accountable after cancer with building Streamlit in terms of the life that I wanted for myself. Rest. I was still, it was really like, okay, I had cancer. I'm back now. Let me rebuild. Now, the struggle, self accountable in terms of I need and like, oh, it's okay to take a nap on this day. You know what I mean? And not having the anxiety around that activity because you feel like you should be doing something else. And so I think the accountability piece for high achievers is incredibly important because we have that muscle memory of, okay, to be successful doing said thing, I need to play because of the muscle memory of what allowed you to be successful, to begin with. And yeah, it's really just it's really reframing that, holding yourself accountable, but then also I think study other people in business. There are actually a lot of examples of people who around kind of the middle age mark, like maybe they have some success, but they regroup. And I'm not even build actually say from that knowledge base that allowed them to become successful and they begin to start working in different ways. And so that accountability is that's needed, but then also the self-awareness of really just being real with yourself and saying like, I don't want to work 40 hours a week. Like, how many hours do you want to?
Yeah. I think that's, yeah. Yeah. I think the accountability that you mentioned and just the difficulty of overcoming the muscle memory, like we are wrestling with our own muscle memory, but we're also up against the social norms and societal norms that also say that your work is your worth and your achievement is, your worth, and that's your value to the world. And so, one of the things that I am really excited and hopeful about with this book is that it allows us to hold one another accountable because it's starting and shifting and bringing a conversation to light so that it becomes a part of the our collective vocabulary and our collective conversation that hey, you're doing too much, or is this something you even want to do? Why don't you sit down? Why don't you rest?
Mhm.
Why don't you let me support you? Or do you even really need all of that? Who told you you had to do all of that, right? And it's like you said, with the internet and AI being these huge shifts, this is a huge shift that I think we're beginning to see, but it is such a huge, we've been here so long, hundreds of years. It's going to
So
take time. We may not see it in our lifetimes, but I think being being in this place to be having these conversations, we can at least begin to shift things for the next generation. So,
people kind of almost in an act of protest, yeah, showing
what's
people like this
possible?
is what it looks like. This is I'm choosing to live my day or my life. And really, that's why the work that you're doing with the Rest Revolution is literally so important. The day that you told me about it, I'm like, yes, yes, I want to be involved with this some kind of way. This is it. This is the next phase for so many people.
Thank you so much for that confirmation and for seeing me. Tell people how they can see you, where they can find you, where they can engage, where if you want to be found. If if you don't want to be found, that's fine too. But I know you have so many wonderful things going on. So whatever you choose to share with us, please let us
You
know
can
how we
follow
can engage.
Instagram. I'm semi active on TikTok, but you can follow usually on any platform at a. You can follow the farm while living farms. I post there occasionally as well. It is wintering season, so I'm probably going to be posting there more than on my personal profile here soon. And for the companies that I'm working with, Low Fruit VC as well. And I talk about, the stuff that we're doing with AI, but really all of the amazing founders that we're working with, like you.
What about your newsletter and all of the resources that
You brought this up. Okay, so my newsletter is on hiatus, but this conversation
okay?
perfect example because before I'm like, I gotta grow this newsletter and I gotta send out something at least every week and I gotta do a long form at least every week. And then eventually I was like, okay, let me take a break. It's okay. Maybe you have seasons of the newsletter. But yes, in my wintering season, I like to write about the future of technology. And so I'll be writing again on my newsletter about future predictions for AI, technology, just the areas of opportunity that I see. And so you can follow that. That's on my website, or you can go to views.angelabenton.co to subscribe.
Yeah, and then there's tons of stuff where people can catch up on the things that you've already written, right? So they don't even need anything
You
new. They just need to
do
be able.
long form. So if you like reading long form, 1,000 words, sometimes longer than that. I think my year in review might be like 3,500 words. You can grab a tablet, sit down with a cup of tea, and read about kind of the future of AI. So there's a ton of stuff read about on there. There's old episodes of the podcast as well. I have old episodes on my YouTube and on Apple and Spotify from The Gray Area, which is a podcast I did several years ago, and AB on AI, which is the companion podcast to the newsletter.
Well, I love it. I love it. I love it. Well, I'll be sure to share all of those links. But Angela, thank you so much for sharing your story, your life, your journey with us. You're such an inspiration. I've got to get a farm. That's like a new goal that has been unlocked.
Actually, the first podcast that I've done that I've actually talked about everything. Because usually, if it's a podcast request, it's like, oh, we want to talk about business and AI and investing, or it's just about the farm. And so, what I love about this, and hopefully there's more of this in my future, is really being able to share how all of this really is intertwined. At least for me, it is. So, thank you for giving me the platform and allowing me
It is.
to share this with your audience.
Thank you for joining us, and thank all of you for listening and being a part of this special series. We will see you on the next episode. Bye.